Hi, it's Smart Bastard here. We are actually fast approaching the 1 year mark for working on Bladewarden, but progress has been good over the last 2 months since my last devlog. Lots of changes this time. It turns out building a decent game requires a decent engine, so I kicked things off this sprint with a massive refactoring of how map objects are rendered. I added new population data, so settlements are now more likely to spawn in certain areas. I've quadrupled the size of the world. I have added roads and all that goes with it, generation logic, rendering, pathfinding, and their effects on units. There is now a way to see if there are multiple units on the same hex. There is now a proper date time system. Probably should have done that one when I actually changed the game to be real time, but hey ho. I have added an urban hex type, so settlements and other constructions don't replace the terrain type. I have added different types of people to the unit parties, like light infantry and heavy cavalry, whilst also separating out settlement populations into nobles, freemen, peasants and slaves. And finally, I have added factions and faction borders that are displayed on the map. So, what doth this look like, you might rightfully ask? Behold! It looks almost the same. I mean, that's what makes sense considering most of the changes were to the engine, not the GUI or map hexes themselves. Note to self, engine changes make for poor video clickbait. However, the vigilant amongst you may have recognised we do now have roads connecting the settlements. This was a right pain to add, not just to display the roads that connected in every conceivable direction, but also the pathfinding involved in actually placing them. There's still a lot of work to do here, like rivers and roads looking bad when they're on the same hex, or exactly which settlements are connected to which ones, but I'll get round to that in the future. Maybe changing generation so it creates historical generation in yearly steps like Dwarf Fortress or Shadow Empire does. That sort of generation would then let me place settlements in a more natural way, allowing simulated settlers to spread across the map from various points, producing a more natural road network, and would help with making realistic faction borders as well. But that's one for the future. Other than that, the multiple unit markers work well, and they change depending on whose faction's units are in the same hex. The date time system also advances at a rational rate, with each day split into various times of the day, like dawn or night, which may have an impact on battles and other in-game events later. And to build up the actual gameplay, we officially have factions now. Not in the GUI, mind you, but they exist in the engine. Get created during the new game, and they do have ownership of hexes now. As part of that, I've had to render some sort of borders on the map itself. However, unlike the road or rivers, which some poor soul had to previously make in an asset pack for me, I need to make the borders myself, and it takes time to make every conceivable direction a border. So far, I've ended up with a nice round 63 files. I feel like I'm missing a few, to be honest. And the worst thing is, I'm going to need to redo each and every one of these files to make them look prettier one day. But for now, they do at least work, and they at least show the borders properly. And once I add in faction relations, I should be able to change the border colour to red for enemies and green for allies fairly simply. Apart from the map now being 200 by 200 instead of 100 by 100, that's all the visible changes, but I feel we made some good progress towards something a bit more substantial. Especially when taking into account the sheer amount of refactoring I've done, which is coincidentally why the number of files and lines of code in the intro hasn't seen a massive increase, because I was able to consolidate a lot and remove quite a few unnecessary things. But there's nothing to show you, visibly, since it's all in the code. Looking into the future, towards the next devlog, although I would love to immediately get started on the historical generation system, I'm going to build up some useful tools and menus for the player instead. Specifically, I would like to properly show the faction ownership of a hex in the GUI menu, not just its borders. I would then like to allow players to found new settlements and extend their borders as units move around. I want to then add in an event log type of panel, so players can actually see what's happening in other parts of the world, with little messages saying, new trading party created or trading party destroyed, whatever, and make the world feel more alive, even if they can't see any units actually moving. I would then like to add a faction-wide resource panel for things like food, wood, metal, etc, so we can actually have some sort of gameplay. Then I would also like to add a mini-map, so a player can move around the wider map more easily. And finally, I would like to add a fog of war to the player, so they can't see what's happening on the whole map if it's out of sight, and also exploration fog so the entire world isn't immediately visible in general. And yeah, That's actually a lot of work, since a lot of it is completely new stuff too. I heavily suspect the minimap in particular may be a pain in the arse to implement, since it is effectively meaning that I need to make a mini version of the main map with its own little hex icons, and I have no idea how to do that right now, but I'm hoping once it's all done it will help push Bladewarden to feel less like a bare-bones simulator and much more like a game. Anyhow, thank you, as always, for watching, and if you made it this far, please do like and subscribe, so you could get to continue to watch me on this increasingly long journey into indie game development. Until next time, bye!